You've said you're engaging in prayer, which is the offense. Silent prayer. You are still engaging in prayer, which is the offense. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not quoting 1984. I'm quoting an exchange between a police officer and a member of the British public on the streets of Britain in 2023. Isabel von Spruce is a charitable volunteer who stopped to pray in her own mind outside an abortion facility in Birmingham, outside of its operational hours. Her actions were imperceptible. She was simply standing on the street thinking thoughts. But these thoughts were not acceptable to the authorities. She was arrested, criminally charged, and faced trial at Birmingham Magistrates Court. Now, had she been shouting about, say, Brexit or the environment, like some of our friends outside the building today, that would have been fine. She could have said as much as she liked. But because she was thinking silent thoughts about abortion, about her beliefs that unborn children matter and that women deserve better than abortion, Isabel was arrested in an apparently 13 years conservative Britain. How is this possible? How have we created literally a thought police? And our government have now passed legislation which would roll out these local thought crime measures out across the country, resulting in even silent prayer becoming illegal on many more streets in Britain. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my belief that this one story consolidates just about everything that has gone wrong with our movement. If conservatives of today cannot conserve the inner sanctum of our mind and to hold personal and, heaven forbid, Christian thoughts, if we cannot conserve this basic, natural, fundamental right, it's possible that we've lost our way a little about what we're trying to conserve. The lethargy of conservatives is oft attributed to the fact that by our very nature, we're not prone to build, we're not prone to act. We are, as Edmund Burke said so aptly, connecting the dead, the living, and the yet to be born by preserving our well-worn democratic values, the excellently built, beautiful cathedrals that we have been handed down from those before us. Cathedrals, our long-held British values, are only sustainable if we act to sustain them. And our democratic foundations of free society, free speech, space for the individual to thrive and prosper with support from their family and community ties will not remain firm if we do not do the necessary work of repairing and strengthening these foundations against a stormy and hostile climate. The battle for free speech, freedom of thought, was fought and settled throughout various moments of British history, and our legal tradition also protects long-established common good values such as the right to private and family life and the right to life without merit or distinction. The cathedrals have long been built, but just as Notre Dame burned in the neglect of modern Europe in 2019, we know that even the grandest of cathedrals require serious and active protection before the roof caves in. Many of us watched with great interest as the party that bears this movement's name was elected in a 2019 landslide, and the Tory manifesto made a bold pledge. That was to, quote, champion freedom of expression and tolerance, both in the UK and overseas. And we've heard slam dunk sound bites in the chamber against tofu eating, Guardian reading Twitterati, and yes, conservative leaders might have decided that they feel comfortable to define what a woman is now. But talk is cheap and speech is still not free. With such lip service was being paid, we saw in reality the opposite of a conservative vision for society play out in real time. This isn't passive neglect, it's active demolition. It is the Conservative government who actively voted for a bill eroding freedom of thought for people like Isabel von Spruce. It's not only those who pray near abortion facilities who are feeling the demolition of our foundational British values of free speech and freedom of religion. It might be those who hold pro-life thoughts today, but their censorship opens up the floodgates for the censorship of anyone who might dare to share their beliefs in the public square, whether that's street preachers or gender-critical feminists or anti-monarchy protesters, or numerous others who we have heard across this conference. Meanwhile, the government is actively pushing legislation to criminalize parents who pray with their children about gender confusion, or laws which could threaten our ability to freely exchange thoughts and ideas online. If this is what championing freedom of expression and tolerance looks like, I'd hate to see the results of a government that opposes it. The case has been made eloquently throughout the last few days that there is a clear link between social institutions and human flourishing, that a strong family empowers the individual to thrive. Family, another common good, another societal cathedral. And the numbers don't lie. We've heard it again and again. Families are great. We've heard all the facts. Children who live with married parents are less likely to suffer from poor mental health. Fathers in the home are one of the strongest safeguards against adolescent poverty and crime. Women who are married are significantly less likely to be victims of violent crime, and married men less likely to perpetrate violent crimes. In this light, it's easy to look around in despair right now. The strands of society which wove together support for the individual and the community throughout history are eroded. As we know, our UK marriage rate is at an all-time low, and most women don't have children before the age of 30, leading to an impending demographic crisis. And 200,000 lives are lost every year to abortion on this island. That's another life lost every 2.5 minutes in our country to abortion. In the time that I'm taking to give this talk, that will be another 6. And that's another 6 women who will have to deal with the trauma of that impact. By the way, 70% of women in the UK want to see our abortion gestational term limit lowered from the current 6 months in the UK, about 24 weeks, to something more humane, perhaps towards the European standard of about 3 months. Yet we Conservatives won't even talk about these things. We just blindly push to erode protections even further. The culture war wages on, but it feels like we're losing ground to stand on and to conserve every moment. One more note on cathedrals. And I appreciate that this was covered in the last panel, but I think the good points bear repeating. I can't help but notice that cathedrals are not only built to be beautiful, but they are built to be a home of worship to God. Yet the conservative movement, in my view, took a fatal hit by allowing the new atheist movement into the 2000s to proclaim the death of God. As a movement, and indeed at this conference, it's evident that we long for the cathedrals of old, the traditions of human dignity, of natural rights, of justice. But we're also content to see Christ thrown out of the cathedral. Well, I'm convinced that a cathedral and a worldview of morality will crumble into confusion if it's not built on a solid rock, something that the framework of Christianity once offered. And indeed, as was said, the liberal left have filled the void with their own religion, with rules and dogmas and prophets and priests and the concept of sin and redemption. They pay credence to the teachings of Oprah Winfrey and Dylan Mulvaney, and they pay retribution for the original sin of their born privilege. Human beings long for religion, and the left have filled that need with an attractive religion which is not true. While we have been left empty-handed with principles moored without a basis and without real hope, truth, beauty, and redemption to offer. God help conservatives, you might say. Heaven knows we need it. We are overwhelmed by the cultural and institutional dominance of those who oppose freedom. This has led to the demoralization among those of us who seek to uphold policies based on the common good. These issues feel like lost causes. Yet our response largely has been one of 2 poor choices. Either we conservatives fly from the big conversations that we need to have about abortion, marriage, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, with heads in the clouds, appeasing the liberal or woke mob for whom the ground we give will never be enough. Or we just stand hands on head, standing over the abyss, yelling, "Stop!" to tumbleweed. We can cry all we want to, but freeze-framing and armchair complaining will not do anything to transmit the values that we have to generations to come. I propose a reframe. Conservatives might not be builders, but we need to put our shoulders to the grind of refurbishing and reclaiming and re-articulating the beauty of common good beliefs that have been handed across the generations for everyone. If we believe what we say is true, that our fellow man benefits from the liberal traditions that Britons hold dear, that is free speech, free thought, democratic dialogue, support for the family so that even our youngest and weakest members can survive, then we have to be able to make our case to offer something different, special, appealing. Instead of just saying no to extreme gender ideology, why don't we say yes to celebrating true biological malehood and womanhood, to reassuring kids that they are wonderfully made, healthy, and normal? Instead of saying no to censorship, can we say yes to a plurality and a diversity of views? Can we take steps to further embed free speech at the heart of our legal framework and bring forward training to help officers better balance the true weight and right of free expression as they make their proportionality assessments when it comes to dealing with comedians and street preachers and people who want to pray? There are people far wiser than me who on this stage over the last few days have made really interesting concrete policy suggestions, including on better support for the family. We have so many ideas to pull from across Europe, from countries who have recognized the terrifying trajectory of an upturned demographic pyramid and reestablished support for family values like home care allowances and family-friendly tax structuring. But even before we dive into considering and pushing forward such ideas, we need to be articulating and making the case for the common good. Writers, editors, tweeters, cultural influencers, I'm looking at you. There is a huge responsibility on you now to be making this case every day. Don't shy away from the A word of abortion. Don't shy away from furthering thoughtful positions on marriage, motherhood, fatherhood, freedom of speech, freedom of religion and belief. Most people do think that family is important, that children deserve stability, that you shouldn't go to jail for saying or thinking unpopular things. And yes, even most people think that women deserve better choices than abortion. The more we act like these are unacceptable beliefs, the more they will become so. But let's not throw common sense out of the Overton window. My presentation today is on fighting lost causes. But ladies and gentlemen, these causes, free speech, free thought, family, the right to life, they're not lost because they're defeated. They're lost because we lost them. We misplaced them for a while. But lost things can be found. They can be dusted off, they can be touched up, revived into something attractive and meaningful that will provide the foundations for future generations to thrive. It takes one leap of faith. It takes the conservatives stepping out of their comfort zone and once again embracing conservatism to the full. It will take a lot of courage and maybe, if you like, a bit of prayer, though do be sure to consult local laws when you're about to do so for the time being. Thank you so much.